Welcome to the SNN.Network Canada virtual event. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Cameron Groom from Microbix. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy schedules to attend the presentation. I hope you'll find it interesting, and certainly don't hesitate to reach out to me directly or through SNN should you want a follow-up call or have any questions that aren't addressed on our call today. Just based on the software, I'm going to wait until the end of the presentation to address questions, and I'll look to finish up my slides within 20 minutes to allow sufficient time. Microbix Biosystems has been involved in the infectious diseases space for over 3 decades. Our firm started out with the virologist son of a country doctor in Ontario, Canada, and began supporting the public health labs by making media for them to, growth medium for them to do the culturing of different bacterial and viral strains that were circulating in the communities. He then started to be asked to do the culturing of the viruses and bacteria for the public health labs, and that led the company to begin doing that work for diagnostics companies around the world. And we've more recently moved from that ingredients business for ingredients for making tests into providing our own fully regulated, branded, innovative, and proprietary medical devices. And that's driving some very real growth for the company that we'll talk about today. In terms of safe harbor, I'll keep it brief. You obviously know there'll be forward-looking statements, and we do rely on those provisions under Canadian and U.S. securities laws. Our company today sells all around the world, and we're a leading provider of products in 3 areas. One is our big growth driver today, which is our test quality assessment products. These are controls that mimic positive and negative patient samples to make sure that tests are not providing false negative or false positive results, both of which have catastrophic consequences. And that business has tripled in our fiscal 2021 ended September 30th and continues to grow at an accelerating rate. We've also stepped up to provide viral transport medium, taking our original expertise for making complex formulations of medium, and which we still do in tens of thousands of liters for our ingredients business, to provide that critical product for our home province of Ontario, Canada. No one in Canada was in fact making that sort of product in any kind of quality system, and we volunteered to move forward to address that critical supply chain issue and are now a mainstay supplier of that critical product for our province. And we're now working to automate production to scale that 5 to 10x as we are doing with our test controls business. And finally, our ingredients business still moving forward as a real revenue generator for our company, but with a lower growth rate than the other 2 elements of our business, but with very good margins. So we're seeing very strong sales growth. We approached 80% sales growth in 2021 over fiscal 2020. We've improved our gross margins considerably as to by about 16 percentage points over the course of the fiscal year, and moved to strongly positive EBITDA margins and net margins as well. And this is has driven share price appreciation, but will continue to drive it going forward. Just briefly on management, my background is 30 years experience in life sciences and capital markets. I've served in a variety of different roles as a successful sell-side equity research analyst for a decade, led investment banking for one of the major Canadian bank-owned investment dealers in Canada, and then got into running public companies. I have a great team under me. This just scratches the surface of the people that I'm privileged to work with great experience in the CFO, COO, senior vice president roles, and we have an incredible amount of bench strength for a company of our size, which has just broken the 100 employee mark here in Ontario, Canada. Our board is similarly qualified. We have independent chairman Martin Marino with experience with Merck Generics Group and Apotex, Peter Bletcher, a prolific MD entrepreneur, providing medical perspective, Mark Cochran, just retired as executive director of Johns Hopkins Medicine, a name you might have heard of, Von Embro Pantaloni, our audit committee chair, with extensive background in my predecessor, Anthony Giovinazzo, chair of our Human Resources, Governance and Compensation Committee, very successful life sciences entrepreneur in his own right, and Joe Renner, as well, a major shareholder of the company, who is the co-founder and chairman of Zydus Pharmaceuticals, which is about now, I believe it's about number 4 now for prescriptions filled in the United States, so widely successful pharmaceutical company. Capital structure of the company, we're approaching 100 million Canadian market cap. We have reasonable liquidity associated with the company. Our primary exchange is the TSX, the big board in Canada, and we have an OTCQX listing as well, where we're seeing some increasing day-to-day volume on that exchange. We are well cashed up with about 10 million in cash on our balance sheet and an undrawn line of credit for another 2 that we will be expanding. And we've been reducing the debt load through repayments of our debt from free cash flow generation, and are now at about a current ratio of over 4 and a debt-to-equity ratio of under 0.5 and falling, with positive net earnings, EBITDA, and cash flow. I mentioned our 3 revenue-generating business divisions. The quality assessment products is the fastest-growing side of things, with the great increasing sophistication and the massive increases in global testing capacity. This is really moving forward to be incredibly important, and avoiding false negatives that send people back into, infected people visiting vulnerable relatives or going back into hospitals or nursing homes. You do not want to have any false negatives in your testing, and similarly, you don't want to have false positives where communities are sent back into lockdowns with the economic and mental health damages associated with those. So we're seeing some very real growth in that area of our business. We also have a very important strategic agreement with Copan Italia, and a brilliant company out of Italy, near Milan, Brescia, that is the global leader in the flocked swabs that you see stuck up everybody's noses these past 2 years. We are the only company with whom they will work to put controls on their swabs, test controls on their swabs, which is very important, and that extends through to co-branding with Microbix for our respective brands, our Red and Proceed brands with their Flock, FLOQ brand, which is incredibly well recognized in the laboratory industry. Those devices are called Flock swabs, and that is the Copan brand. Our viral transport medium, I mentioned, supplying this critical product in strategic quantities for our province, and moving ahead with that business, scaling it as well. And then our ingredients business, that's been the wellspring of our expertise in the infectious disease industry, that continues to be important for us, and I'll touch on those. This slide is a bit busy, but it summarizes the skills that are required to generate these test controls that we call quality assessment products was a name that captures all the regulatory flavors, if you will, of that product. But creating something that effectively emulates a real patient sample but has the stability and safety and consistency that's required of a medical device is not trivial. And we have a pretty rare expertise to make such products. We know how to grow the bugs, we know how to inactivate them, we can augment them using any kind of leading edge biology tools, we know how to formulate, we know how to format, we know how to stabilize, and we have all the manufacturing and quality systems to create those products. And that's an opportunity that leverages our skills in not competing with the global giants in diagnostics industry, but rather in supporting them. And that's a winnable and defensible niche for us to pursue successfully to build shareholder value. We don't want to be fighting against companies that have billion-dollar budgets to launch new test platforms. We want to support those companies and make them our clients. And that's what we're doing successfully. And we're doing that in three categories in the test controls. One is in selling such products to the organizations that do the proficiency testing and accreditation of clinical laboratories. And we're now doing about $2 million a year in that category, which is predominantly white label business because by definition, those organizations are sending out packages of blinded samples to the labs to see if they can correctly figure out what they are. The second category is supporting the test manufacturers, the OEMs, with products for inclusion with their test kit consumables. So a box of 50 test cartridges, for example, can include a Microbix control in there so that the instructions for use or every 50th test confirms that the operator knows what they're doing, the consumables and cartridges and reagents are working properly, and the readers have not drifted out of calibration or something gone wrong. And also for training new technicians and validating new installs for use. So very important usage there and driving some big sales growth for us. And then the third category in supporting the clinical labs themselves for their formal quality management systems, where they're actually bookending the day's runs of tests with a known positive and a known negative so they catch systemic errors promptly. And this is not a trivial thing when I talk about these systemic errors. We've seen, for example, in the UK, a clinical laboratory near Birmingham doing tests for the National Health Service missed between 40 and 50,000 positive COVID cases and sent people back out into the community with active infections. And that is believed to have led to a 15-fold increase in the active COVID infections in the UK. So there are very real consequences if you don't have products like this and aren't using them as a part of your lab quality system. And that's very much what is driving our revenues. And you'll see our Q4 will be reported the morning of December 23rd. We have a September 30th fiscal year and driving real growth in that product category. And that's going to continue. We have products for full range of respiratory infections, sexually transmitted infections, hospital-acquired infections, pediatric infections, gastrointestinal, et cetera, and it positions us extremely well, not just during COVID, but as COVID ultimately becomes endemic as opposed to pandemic and starts to ebb, we are positioned to support the industry for as that capacity gets redirected. We don't have time to go into the details of justifying that statement on this call, but I'm certainly happy to follow up. VTM, just to recap, anytime you're doing testing, that when you see them snap off that swab and put it in a tube of stuff, that tube of stuff is preserving the viral antigens, genetic material, or even human genetic material so that that sample can be tested at leisure in the lab. Otherwise, it's degrading in real time, and how much nucleic acid or antigen you would find in that sample would be correlated more with time than it would be with whether the patient had a positive or negative sample result. So it's incredibly important that you have VTM to stabilize those samples. And as I indicated earlier, we stepped up to provide this critical product, manufacture a first-class product with a secure supply chain for our home jurisdiction. And this is, just indicative of some of the production we're doing. Each one of those vials is worth $4 to $6. And we've supplied more than 1 million vials for our home province, continuing manufacturing on a semi-automated basis that we've just paused while we put in place full automation, which will increase our capacity 5-fold on a single shift basis and 10-fold on a double shift basis. So very good business opportunity for us and growing very strongly. And as I mentioned, our ingredients business, this involves the provision of antigens for test manufacture. And these are tests that are looking for antibodies in your blood. And your antibodies have to have a organism or an antigen to bind to drive that reaction. These aren't substitutable by PCR tests, so it remains a very important component of diagnostic medicine, this genre of tests. And we're one of the very few companies in the world that can supply these native antigens in industrial quantities. And historically, this was 90% of our sales, and it's come down to about 50% because of the success of the branded medical device product lines that we've been manufacturing. We have very good capabilities broadly. You can see into one of our labs here where we are doing state-of-the-art bioreactor viral antigen production. We are seeing great growth in our branded products in the control side, and we're extracting ever more dollars out of each ever more percent of margin out of each dollar of sales on our ingredients business. So all this is driving not just sales growth, but also margin expansion. And our revenues will be up close to 80% year over year in fiscal 2021 based on new product introductions. Our gross margin has expanded considerably, up about 16 points over the year over year, and our EBITDA has gone from trivial to quite material, and our net margin will be approximately 20% on our top line sales for the fiscal year just ended. We've seen some share price appreciation, but this is a chart from one of the analysts following our company. We're still trading at somewhere around a third of the value of comparable companies. There is certainly some justification for a size discount, but it does not justify a 70% valuation discount for our company, and that's one of the reasons I'm attending this event today, is to close up that gap so we're not such a ridiculous acquisition target. With that, what I'd leave you with is that we're very much an investable company. We have sales and sales growth. We've great consciousness of our gross margin and ability to generate free cash flow. We've recorded 3 consecutive record quarters across 2021. We're well capitalized to expand our production capacity and continue to secure more clients, and we have a very broad portfolio of products that will ensure our ongoing success. So with that, I'm pretty much at the 20-minute mark that I've been targeting, and I'm just going to scroll over to Q&A. In terms of question I see here is where do we see the company in 2 to 3 years? We're going to be continuing to build out our fully regulated and branded medical devices products. And the biggest growth areas will certainly be in the test controls portfolio that we have created. And where we will be targeting is to move revenues from the 18.5, 19 million range that we closed out fiscal 2021 at, up towards the 100 million sale mark within a 3-year time horizon is really what we're targeting. And we see that growth is very much achievable based on the relationships that we're building with the diagnostic OEMs, with the major clinical laboratories, and through the international network of distributors we built for our products that are selling them now in over 30 countries. So these are still early innings for us. There's a tremendous amount of growth that we're going to be looking to capture going forward, and we see that as driving some very real value creation for shareholders. And if you care to go on some of the insider reporting issues, you'll see that management have been consistently increasing their holdings in the company, and we have a significant ownership by management and directors. So, with that, I think we've got a few minutes left. I do encourage anyone to pose any additional questions you may have, and I'll remember to refresh my screen here. And I see a question from a shareholder asking whether there is a shareholder rights plan in place to prevent a hostile takeover. It's a great question. We do have provisions in place, such as advance notice bylaws and so forth. We're not entrenched managers, though. If somebody comes through and has something that's certainly has an adequate change of control premium that is in the best interest of shareholders, we bring that forward to the board for consideration and to establish whether we needed to run a process. But I think it would be more fun for everybody if we continue to build the business and really have that pure play of a successful small cap company becoming then a mid cap, and perhaps even a large cap going forward, and we can provide some sustained above market rate growth for everyone. So we'll see what happens. I think we're an attractive target today. We're only going to be becoming more and more attractive, and we'll see at what point somebody wants to make us the proverbial offer we can't refuse. I do have a slight advantage in that I am a former reformed investment banker, so I'm not completely naive or intimidated if somebody was to come with a hostile or at least an aggressive approach. We do know how to respond to that in a manner that appropriately represents shareholder interests, but aren't intimidated by that approach. So thank you. It's a great question and a very pertinent one. Good. Well, again, I think we've got a couple minutes left, but it's better to conclude more briefly than ramble on. So I'll conclude by thanking you all for taking the time to learn a bit about Microbix and to reiterate the offer to approach us directly through SNN or through Torrey Hills Capital in the U.S., who represents us in IR south of the border, or Adelaide Capital, who represents us in Canada. Many ways to get in touch with us, and it'd be a delight to sit down with any of you one-on-one to have a deeper explanation about Microbix and what we're doing and why we're so excited about our prospects. So with that, I'll thank you very much, and I'll refresh one last time to see if there are any questions, and then say goodbye. Mr. Moderator, I am going to now sign off.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's presentation. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, and take care, everyone. Bye.